Hey friends, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So I want to give you an update. What's going on in the market today? I'll share my thoughts and I want to get yours as well. So I'll just tell you an overriding theme is growth. This is all about growth. Where is the growth? Where can I find the growth? Where can I invest in growth? And what do we do if there's no growth? This is what's going on in the market. So for example, today in Europe was announced they're lowering rates. I guess it's going to be 3.25%. And there's bets that there's going to be more cuts. For those in Europe, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the swing. I'll read the details here. It says, while policymakers maintain they have yet to decide what they will do for their final meeting of 2024, traders are betting that reductions in December and January are near a certainty. So the market's like, okay, you're definitely going to cut. Overall, traders in swaps markets expect another 4 or 5 quarter-point rate cuts by the middle of next year. So if in Europe you're at 3.25%, 5 quarter-point cuts, so maybe we'll cut it down to 2%. They're really worried about growth, and essentially then you're talking about like interest rates in Europe are like half of what they are in the USA. It's pretty crazy. But in Europe though, they're worried about deflation the same way they are in China. So basically prices could be theoretically going down. There's just not enough demand there. So I know a lot of times we talk about inflation, right, as being really bad, but it's not entirely bad if you have no inflation, right? No demand, no prices going up anywhere. It becomes opposite where things are in a downward spiral, right? Where prices are lowering either because there's no demand or people don't have any money and then you got to keep cutting prices, et cetera, to get people to buy stuff. So think of it this way. Let's say you're trying to sell your house and let's say you bought a house for $1 million, for example, right? So in order to recoup your money, you would prefer to sell your house more than what you bought it for. But like, what if you can't find any buyers and like you have to keep cutting prices, right? Deflation. So it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for economy. It just becomes overall widespread. One thing that's going on in Europe, and we've actually talked about this before on the channel, I don't know, a couple episodes ago, to where people in Europe tend to save more than they do in the USA. There's just more uncertainty about fuel costs and about war. Whereas the Americans, they just keep on spending. There was a report that came out today that consumer spending is stronger than what was expected in the USA. And it was interesting because that report coincides with what the banks are saying of like banks were, forecasting more gloomy performance by American consumers, but I guess Americans keep showing up. And I pose this question to you. Is your spending about the same as it was last year? Are you cutting back or are you increasing? And your situation may be different than everyone else's, but I kind of give you the aggregate. Although I will say this, and we talked about it several times on the channel, the top of the economic rungs, they seem to be doing okay. It's really the bottom is really getting hurt. And unfortunately, this is just what it is. The gap between rich and poor is expanding. Essentially, if you have assets, be it stocks, real estate, these kind of things, they just keep going up, right? Today is like another all-time high for market kind of stuff. I think Nvidia was up like crazy. One other chip stock, Taiwan Semi was up, right? You'll see these kind of stocks soaring. Housing prices are still high, right? So if you're in these things, well, at least on paper, you're doing fantastic, right? And this is like the wealth effect because people look at their accounts and they feel like, oh, okay, things are going great. I feel good about the future. I'm just going to keep on spending. But if you're in the lower runs, you get to make a choice of where, am I just going to borrow more money to keep up with my neighbors, or am I going to cut back on spending? Now, what's interesting though is that you'll see sort of this kind of stuff materialize in markets. So I'll give you an example like Dollar Tree. These kind of companies, they may have struggles because the lower people in lower in the economic scale are struggling more. You do see some pullback on the upper part of the economic scale. So we mentioned before, channel was like LV. They're worried about Chinese consumers not having enough money, so they're not necessarily buying the goods. So you track all this stuff together because, again, guys, when you're investing in a company, you want to see that the company is doing well. So in terms of profits, it was Taiwan Semi. They said, and that's the AI stuff. They said, hey, we're making 54% more than we made last year. Will that trend continue? Well, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they're kind of betting on these things to continue. So why am I mentioning those three companies? It was just announced today. Amazon's, I think they're investing $500 million into nuclear power. That follows Google, that follows Microsoft. It'll be interesting if more companies jump on board this nuclear power thing to basically fuel their data centers and AI ambitions. So we'll see. I also talked about other uncertainties going on in the market. Guys, it's the election stuff. And I take a deep breath because always frustrating to talk about these things because essentially people have their minds made up, and what I mean by that is in a stubborn kind of way where it's hard to have any realistic conversation with anyone about this stuff, right? But I try my best to have that conversation with you. So, for example, I told you that that European Central Bank's cutting rates, right? There's also a forecast from the IMF of like, okay, what if Trump wins? What if Harris wins? Sort of, where could we go from here? The bet that I keep, and I'll mention IMF stuff in a second, but the bet that I keep seeing though is that the polls are tightening up. That last NBC poll was like 48, the national poll between Harris and Trump, so it's very, very close. And then I see more reports that, okay, Trump he's doing better in the polls, right? Let's be honest with you, he's doing better in the polls. So we may see another Trump presidency. You never know. Now, one thing I want to point out though is that this, according to IMF, they're talking about debt to GDP ratio will go up both under Trump and under Harris. Basically, deficit spending, increase in national debt, this kind of stuff. GDP ratio under Trump will go up 17% than what it is today to 142%. So right, yeah, that would be debt to GDP to 142%. So much more debt than GDP. So basically more debt than growth. Under Harris, it will go to 133% of GDP. And I guess these forecasts are in the next 10 years. If we don't change anything at all, it would be 125, right? So change no policy in USA, 125 debt to GDP. Under Trump, it would be 142% debt to GDP, and then Harris would be 133. I see these kind of numbers. This is just IMF, but not just IMF, but from all over. We saw one in the Wall Street Journal recently. We've seen it from Goldman Sachs. We've also saw it from the Penn Wharton estimates. So again, I understand this. If you're a Trump supporter, you don't pay attention to anything in the news. You think everyone's in cahoots against you, and you just want to build a big wall and kick out the dark people. I get that. That's what this thing boils down to, and it's hard to have these conversations with you guys. But if you're watching my channel, hopefully you're more of a free thinker and can understand a little bit more complex thought. But the basic gist of it is that with Trump, you're probably looking at higher tariffs, right? So that'll pass higher costs on the consumers, right? So more inflation. You're probably looking at slower trade, and chances are slower growth. It all depends what you want, right? The one thing I will say with this kind of stuff, and I don't know why anyone never mentions it, and I'd like to hear your guys' opinion on that, but if you were really, really concerned about illegal immigration, these kind of things, I think one thing that you would do, and like I said, no one ever mentions it, is you would just have really big fines on anyone who employs these people, right? So if you're concerned about too many people crossing the border, just make sure there's no reason for them to, like, they can't get jobs. So you would fine farmers, you would find people who hire these people as gardeners, any number of things. But as I think, and this would be my opinion on this one, and because we don't know, it hasn't happened, but I would be willing to bet, like, say a place like, well, for example, Texas, it may turn out there's a whole bunch of like really wealthy conservative people that hire a lot of illegal immigrants to come fix their house, do their garden, be their maids, this kind of stuff. I'd be willing to bet on that one. And I promise you, and I mentioned before on the channel, there's a prominent YouTuber. He's a big Trumper guy named Kevin. And he's got a bunch of nannies. I think he's got like 7 kids. So I think he has like 7 nannies, or he may have more. Who knows? Ask him how many nannies he have. And he's also into real estate. And there's a high chance he's probably using immigrant labor. I wouldn't be shocked, right? So that's the question I would pose to you for those people like Kevin or like any of these people in Texas, is just, hey, if they're really concerned about this stuff, ask them, do you employ any illegal immigrants? I can tell you, like, the Trump companies have been known to do this kind of stuff. For these people, they'll say one thing on the public, but they'll do other thing behind closed doors. So again, ask them. You guys can, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I'm just talking to you guys in practicality. Why does this stuff matter? It was interesting. There was a town hall Trump did. He did it for Univision, which is pretty interesting. It was a hostile environment, same way that Kamala Harris just went on Fox, which I'll talk about in a moment here. But there was a question to Trump of like, and it was from a Mexican worker, and he was like, hey, if there's no illegal immigrants coming across the border, who's going to do these dirty jobs that Americans won't do? And Trump's answer was kind of strange. It was just like, oh, these people come across the border, they're all criminals and bad people and mental institutions. It's like, it didn't really answer the question, but that's Trump. It is what it is. Kamala Harris's Fox interview, I thought she did fine. And then already people are like, "Oh, Chris, you're so biased." I'm just telling you what I saw, guys, and you can watch it for yourself. That's the kind of stuff Trump says. Though he'll just say the immigrants are eating your pets and whatever, that kind of stuff. Harris had to take questions that were frankly dumb. I'll just be honest, it was frankly dumb. They're just like, "Oh, these people are having sex changes in prisons. What do you think about that?" And voters are really concerned about sex changes in prisons. And it's like, that's the stuff they watch on Fox News, and it makes it hard to do any kind of market video or anything like that, because you have a large section of viewers slash population that they're concerned with, for my opinion, nonsense. It's like hard to be nice about this stuff. It's just nonsense. It's like, okay, I guess that's what we're talking about these days. And then it goes back to the markets, is because, like, in order to understand how everything puts together, you can't ignore the politics. I'm just saying politics in the USA is so messy. Are there things that you could criticize in Democrats? I think absolutely. I think the war in the Middle East is a horrible situation. I wish that we weren't tied so closely to various, you want to call them allies over there, whatever you want to call it, but just too close a ties to people that cause too many fights. I'll just leave it at that. I wish things would change at that. The problem with that kind of stuff is you have, and this is the truth on this stuff, you just have certain segments of the population that say, oh, my religion aligns with another religion, and I want to support said people, and you got that. You also have, on the Trump side, they'll say, oh, if you vote for me, there'll be no wars, we're going to be awesome, but it's such a load of hooey. I'll be honest with you, and I've told you guys before on the channel, let's say you have like the situation where Hamas comes and they attack, was attacking Israel. That was October 7th. I promise you, Trump would be like, oh, we're gonna defend Israel. We're gonna go and we're gonna strike them as hard as possible. Like it would be no different under Trump. So this idea that it would be so drastically different, that's something that both parties, they get us involved in wars, and it's just, anyone who says otherwise, I think they just put their head in the sand. And that's why I don't talk about this stuff. It just, you can go all through these things. It's frustrating. So what else is going on with this? There's a bet in the markets right now that Trump could win. That's why I said the polls are tightening up. This is according to Drunken Miller. I know it's a funny name, but he's a billionaire, so don't make fun of him. So basically he's saying, bank stocks are rallying. So that's what we're saying. So it's sort of a bet that Trump will win. We also see the crypto is rallying as well, right? So that's another bet that Trump would win. And then we're seeing that the dollar is strong, which I've also been seeing that. So I'll read this bit to you guys, can hear what this is. This is also the dollar appreciated to a 2.5-month high this morning as currency traders appear to be pricing in a Trump victory, betting that his economic policies would drive up inflation, lower the price of bonds, and strengthen the dollar. Everything that this points to, and I see it everywhere, even from people who say support Trump, is looking at higher inflation under Trump. So, if that's what you want, that's fine. Just know what you're getting. And I'm sure he'll come up with some sort of thing and say like, oh, it's the other people's fault. it's always something like that, right? I know it's hard to talk about this stuff, but it is what it is. Other stuff going on in the market is there's a rumor that Uber might be buying Expedia. It actually makes sense. So the CEO over at Uber, he actually used to be CEO over Expedia. I think that was from 2005 to 2017. His name is Dara Khosrow, how to say his name? Dara Khosrowshahi. He actually went to my school, Brown. He's a little bit older than me, so I don't know him personally. But I wouldn't be shocked if they buy it. We'll see. I think you're going to see still some deals being made in the marketplace. I'll give you an example. It was Morgan Stanley recently came out with their earnings report. Their stock went up like nuts. It was like 7% because they said, "Hey, we're still making deals and stuff like that." Now they took a bath on the Musk deal on Twitter, but I guess they're making money on other deals. One thing I will say though with the markets is that it just seems really unhealthy, to be perfectly frank. I think there's a lot of leverage in the market still. So you'll see things swing like 8% up one day, 8% down another day or whatever. Or you'll see some of these stocks based on like, yes, it is the market's going a certain direction, but is it going to go like a hugely in said direction? So for example, what I mean is that we see these big companies buying into nuclear power. Microsoft, Google, and then today it was announced that Amazon is investing in nuclear power. So basically to fuel their AI stuff. And then I saw a bunch of like little sort of related stocks that were related to, or whatever, going up like nuts, like 50% in a day kind of stuff. And when you move up like that rapidly, it's hard to really know what a fair price for that stuff is. So it's definitely people are trading it. You can certainly make money trading, but just understand for that kind of stuff, it's not really based on fundamentals anymore. It's just, the price action. I thought it was pretty interesting. There's a stock out there, Vista. We don't talk about that much on the channel. It's not a meme stock, at least on that I've seen. I think it might be, but you guys can let me know. I don't watch every single YouTube channel out there. I've heard some people mention it before that some channels are pumping it up, but I want to say it's nuclear related, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that one's actually passed NVIDIA as being the sort of biggest gainer on the S&P 500, and I think we may see that. So we'll see. The other thing I want to mention as well, I told you guys about the divide between rich and poor. There was a really interesting report coming out of Disney. They're going to be raising prices on their VIP tickets. So basically what it is, if you want to go to the front of the line and not have to wait, you can pay more money to do that per day. So the cost right now per day for Disney is like over $100 to get in, right? And then if you want to get the VIP pass, you can pay anywhere from 129 more to like 449 more. So like the ultra wealthy, right? Well, you don't have to be that ultra wealthy, but we'll just say people who are willing to spend a lot on Disney, per person, they may be spending like $550 a day to get at the front of the line. And I'm mentioning this story because I think it sort of captures the markets that we're in and sort of the way the world works. And also too, unfortunately, how to be nice about this, it's just unfortunately, in the USA, there's this culture right now, and I think it keeps increasing to where like it's screw my neighbor as long as I have the money to take advantage of the VIP line at Disney, and I think there's a lot of that, and that's sort of why I point out with like certain actors in the market that will just basically lie to you and say, oh, talking about the robot situation over at Tesla, oh, those robots are awesome, and I love the robots and it's the best AI ever. And then the report comes out that they're, controlled by humans, and they're like, "Oh, they fooled me. I'm sorry." Blah blah. And it's like either lying now or you're lying before that kind of stuff. And it's frustrating. And that's kind of what moves our markets these days. It's funny. My wife and I we met my wife's friend. My wife's friend is Korean because they're both Korean. And then she married it's my wife's friend married a person from France, and now they live in Germany. And we met them a couple days ago, had dinner, met their kids and stuff, and it was really interesting because to hear him talk about like stuff happening in Germany and also in France, and compare it to say here in Korea or in USA, it's kind of all the same. People are struggling, right? Governments don't have enough money to pay for the stuff that they got to take care of. I mean, the big problem really is just there's too many old people. That's really what it boils down to, and there's not enough workers to support said old people. So, you'll see it more pronounced in a place like Japan, to where not enough people are having kids, and so like there's not even enough workers to, be nurses and stuff to take care of the elderly. So they're like depending a lot on immigration. And the U.S. situation is actually quite interesting because it relates to that, and you could relate to here to Korea as well. Is like we have to get foreign workers to stay here in Korea to work on the buildings. Like the building right behind me, or many of these newer buildings going up, you'll see signs written in Vietnamese or Chinese. I mentioned you guys before on the channel because they're bringing in foreign workers to keep things going. What happens if, like, say you cut off the supply of foreign workers, and be it legal or illegal? What happens to U.S. economy? I mean, we'll find out. I mean, that's sort of what I thought that question was interesting, where the guy at Univision asked Trump of like, if you cut off the basically cheap labor that does the dirty jobs, be it agriculture or otherwise, right, gardening, etc., who's going to do that job, and how's the economy going to respond? And that's a question I pose to you. So I think these are tough questions that people don't talk seriously enough about. The way a lot of the voters are in USA, I just hate the dark people and just get rid of the dark people and my life will be better, but maybe not. So we'll find out. So anyway, do appreciate your time, everyone, and catch you on the next video.